Chris Cooper, and a big welcome to the Business Elevation Show on Voice America. It's great to be back with you again. I'm today with a fantastic guest. I'm with Pushpendra Mehta. I'm going to introduce you to him very shortly. But before we do that, I would like to say a big thank you to my guest last week. If you didn't get the chance to listen to the interview with Elizabeth Lutado, if you are somebody who's maybe within, I would say, probably the first sort of 10 years of your career. I would say it was a must of an interview. We talked about leading yourself, and there's some really fantastic tips, thoughts, and frames and ideas about how you can elevate your experience in the workplace. Even if you don't like your boss or you're struggling with the systems and processes and you're feeling frustrated, how do you manage yourself internally such that actually you go on and progress your influence people and progress. We talked about dealing with quiet fear that people often find sits at in their gut, managing your boss and also when you're feeling a bit flat, how do you shift and into momentum with projects and initiatives. I wished I'd listened to that and I'd read that book when I was starting my career out, definitely. However, there was also lots of ideas that you could take on further in your career. So just very, very briefly, I'm Chris Cooper. I develop leaders, teams, and business cultures. I've been doing that for 20 years with my own business. I also have hosted the Business Elevation Show now since September 2011. So we're coming up in May, on May the 9th to the 600th episode. And I also lead the Elevation Collective, an international community of exceptional people who are contributing to a better world through really great initiatives. So that's very, very exciting, I think, where that is evolving. So let's focus in on the interview today. Let's focus in on observe to unmask and how to know people better. We're also going to talk with Pushpendra about karma, which is something we probably only very briefly alluded to in all those episodes. And as that's also the theme of his next book, I wanted to cover that too. Because it's really kind of fascinating stuff. I think in life, what we do to others seems to come back to us, and life can be a little bit of a mirror reflection of what you're putting out. So I really want to talk to him about that. We're going to explore his Wall Street Journal bestseller, Observe to Unmask: 100 Small Things to Know People Better. And we're going to talk about the subtle yet powerful art of observation. Something that we maybe don't quieten our minds enough sometimes to enable us to really truly see others. We're going to draw from this book, and also we'll talk a little bit about Pushpendra's background. His life experiences began in India. He now lives in the US. He's in Atlanta. A funny feeling that Elizabeth from our show last week was in Atlanta too. And we're going to talk about sharpening your perceptions. We'll talk about intuitive listening, etc. But we're also, as I mentioned, we're going to talk about the karma behind human interactions. Whether you're a leader, an entrepreneur, whether you're a seeker or simply curious about what shapes people and outcomes, I think today is going to be really fascinating. So a big welcome to my guest today, Pushpendra Mehta.
Well, it's an absolute honor and pleasure to be on the Business Elevation Show, Chris. Thank you so much for having me. It means a lot to me. Thanks so much.
You're very welcome. So maybe Pushpendra, what you could do is, how about telling us a little bit about your background and how you grew up and what influenced you? I'm always interested to find out, how a person becomes the person they are today.
That's a great question, thank you that you're asking me that as the opening question. So, I grew up in India. I was raised in India. My father he was a senior banker, and he worked for the largest foreign bank in South Asia, which happened to be a British bank. So, he was the crisis man for the organization. He moved a lot. He got transferred, and that meant my mom, my siblings, and we had to live in different cities in India. We were fortunate and blessed that it was quite a privileged upbringing. We lived in big or lavish homes. We were fortunate to attend the top educational institutions, be a part of exclusive country clubs, play sports like tennis or golf, which not too many people of my age then had access to.
Mm.
So we were fortunate. to be blessed with parents who gave us that kind of exposure, what I call the best of the East and the West, with varied experiences. Amidst all this, my mother brought in spirituality and writing to the family. She was a very intuitive person. In fact, she is a very intuitive person. So, so she, by bringing spirituality, writing, and intuition into the family, and my father, and she making sure that while we had this privileged upbringing, we were not spoiled. We had to remain grounded. We had to interact with people or befriend people from all walks of life. It was not meant to be an elitist upbringing. It was meant to be eclectic and inclusive. And that meant that we were exposed to spirituality, storytelling, writing, reading, meeting people from, like I said, all walks of life, and more importantly, what I call compassionate materialism.
Mm.
Uh, so I was fortunate, to have that kind of upbringing, and where it was important once again to hone our skills in being far more of a compassionate, adaptable, and an individual that understood that everything does not come easy in life. You got to work hard for it. Later, I was fortunate to have been blessed, and what I call my life got augmented with the presence of a private but very wise spiritual guide who mentored me for over a decade and taught me the the nuances of observation, karma, human behavior, listening, perception, and also the ability to use all of these to resolve conflicts and challenges in both personal and business life, that then led me to have a non-linear career path that encompassed marketing, public relations and communications, business journalism, online, digital, and news media, as well as consulting in financial services. So, in essence, that was my background, and all of that played into, at some point in time, helping me to adapt to people, places, situations, and cultures. And I met my wife in the year 2012, and she was raised in the US, I was raised in India, but both of us had traveled extensively. I'd also lived in different parts of the world. So when we met, she is a psychologist and I a keen observer of people. So, I used my observation skills and what I had learned from being raised in India and from my spiritual guide to observe and also leverage my intuitive skills to understand that she, a psychologist, would be a suitable life partner. And, that carried on, that actually helped us in having meaningful conversations and carrying on from them to hone my skills again, further hone my skills in the in terms of observing people, human behavior, karma, and the works. And that's when I thought it'd be a good idea to explore the themes further through the world of writing, speaking, and mentoring to both a wider audience that included people as individuals in their personal life and the business workplace.
Mm. So how is you live in Atlanta now in Georgia, and how do what do you make of the world right now, and how does your how can your work help, or how is your work helping to possibly impact the trajectory?
That's again, I think, a great question. So I live in Atlanta, in the United States. It's home to me for the last 12 years. Having said that, I think the world, we live in an uncertain world, no doubt about that. But to me, I believe I'm an eternal optimist. But given the circumstances we are in, I would describe it as a world of cautious optimism that warrants reflection and self-observation. I mean self-observation because to observe means to first observe yourself and then to observe others. The advantage of self-observation is that when we truly see and know ourselves, that helps us effectively unmask our ego and become far more sensitive to the thoughts, feelings, and emotions of the people that surround our world. So in that sense, I think it's good to be optimistic, but it also warrants reflection and self-observation so that we are more compassionate to the world around us.
Yeah, yeah. And do you think what's coming to me at the moment is thinking, do you think that we need to be more understanding of what's going on inside of us, uh, and drawing from the wisdom inside of us, rather than being impacted on a day-to-day basis by everything we hear in the media, for example.
Absolutely. I think the jewels are inside.
Yeah,
So if the jewels are inside and each of us have the positive and the, there is a certain dark side to each of us. But if we can leverage the positive qualities, and that's why I said observation is the key. Observing your words, your actions, your thoughts, intentions, your outcomes, your patterns. These are extremely important because it's just not the words that you choose. It's also your habits. And how do you form the habits? It's the thoughts, the intentions. So if you're able to do that, it becomes a practice. And if that becomes a practice, that's what you become. And if that's what you become, then that determines the outcome of your life, which is why, it's important to understand and know yourselves or understand ourselves. It's only when we understand ourselves and know ourselves accurately can we really go and figure out other people.
yeah, yeah. It's an important journey, isn't it, through life to learn to understand ourselves, because often us who get in the way of the things that we want.
Absolutely. And that's why, you see successful people, you see successful people in the truest sense. You'll find some common themes in them. They're very good at reading the room. They're very good at figuring out people. They're very good at figuring out situations.
Mm.
They're very adaptable, they're humble, they're kind, they're gracious. Regardless of what they've achieved, they're always in that continual learning mode. And where does that come from? It comes from the fact that they know themselves very well, and then they know their strengths, they know their weaknesses, they know what to focus on, and they know what to leave aside. They know the difference between, where to hear, where to respond, and where to leverage the power of silence, and where to act. So I think it again goes back to observe, observe, observe.
Mm. Have you got any examples of where you have really, through the discipline that you have and your wisdom that you've acquired and lots of observation of self, and I imagine also feedback from others and from the world. Have you any examples where you observed something really profound that might have been missed by others?
I think one of the things, I'll give you a few examples later, but one of the things that missed by people, both at the workplace, at the business or work environment, and in your personal lives, it's not something which is discussed very often, is the fact that it's understated, is that when you observe people, you realize people who are stingy or frugal, financially stingy or monetarily stingy. But when it comes to gratitude, appreciation, apology, affection, or compliments, you realize there are lots of people who are stingy, and I call them the emotional stingy. So for example, if you made so much of an effort to invite me over to the show, and I cannot thank you profusely and abundantly, and all I say is thank you, one line, one word. You may not be expecting that, but if I thank you and your team abundantly, profusely, it makes a difference. It makes a difference as a leader when you're leading a team. It doesn't matter if you're leading a business, you're leading a team, or you are running a multinational company. So if you observe people, how do they say a thank you? How do they offer praise? How do they apologize? And if they do it in one word, let's say, sorry, thank you, congratulations, well done, happy birthday,
Yeah.
as opposed to thank you so much, Chris. It's been great speaking with you. Your questions are very intelligent. I did not expect some of these. How have you developed the ability to ask the right questions? That is a better way of engaging with people. So I've seen a lot of people, say these one or two words, but when it comes to themselves, they want people to acknowledge, to celebrate the expression of gratitude, to appreciate, compliment profusely, abundantly. But when it comes to them, they're not able to do it because of a number of reasons. One is insecurity comes out. You're holding some emotions back, which does not allow you to express that emotion abundantly. One. Second is a lack of change because you turn around and hide behind the excuse, oh, I'm a man of small words. Or in our family, we are very informal. We've not been taught to do this. You do this with outsiders. No, you do it with people. You do it with your mom. You do it with your dad. You do it with your siblings. You do it with your friends. You do it with acquaintances and strangers as well. That's where the uniformity of behavior will come in. At the same time, you also realize that a certain sense of ego, how do I make people feel appreciated, valued, and make them feel more important and bigger than me? How can I do that? My job is to make people feel smaller than me. How can I acknowledge the larger than life presence of a competitor? How can I say, I'm a writer, I'm a mentor? How can I say, Chris, you're a better writer or mentor? So I'd hold myself back and say, Chris, well done, I read your book. It's a great book. I'm not going to say anything more. These are the qualities I've observed at the workplace. I've observed in different environments in different countries, including and in the personal space. I tend to pay attention to that. And every time people come and tell me all the time, oh, you're great at appreciating people and you're great at making us feel energized and optimized. And I always tell them one thing, that it goes back to what I read in Dale Carnegie's book years ago: be hearty in your approbation and lavish in your praise. He said that in that book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. And that was something, I was a teenager when I read it, but I've realized the importance of that. And that's why that's something I pay a lot of attention to. And I exhort people that if you're a leader, if you're a manager, begin. If everybody makes their mistakes. There's a way to say that, but start being a little more abundant with your emotions and expressing particularly the positive emotions a little more profusely.
That's really good. I think one of the you mentioned there win friends and influence people. One of the sort of frames in there that I also that really resonated with me when I first heard it, and I think about it a lot, is be more interested than interesting.
Absolutely, you're so right, because the art of conversation somewhere in today's digitally distracted and social media world is kind of lost. So what happens is that we are so into ourselves that we forget that the most important thing is to show interest in other people. And that means speak less, query more, listen intently. And how do you listen intently? By what you just said. You talk as little as you can about yourself. You make the conversation about the other person. You resist the temptation of talking about yourself, your attainments, and your family members' attainments. You resist the temptation of talking about your goals and what your purpose or passion is, but get other people to talk. Encourage them to talk. I've always heard, oh, introverts don't talk. You must have the ability. And I remember you were telling me about it, that you have this fascinating strength to be able to talk to a stranger, to be able to get anybody to talk. That's because you are listening. You're not a listener, you're an active listener. You have the ability to ask the right questions. So if you make it about the other person, you get them to talk. And the most important thing is to talk to them about their interest. Everybody has one interest. It could be an avocation, it could be a hobby, it could be a pet belief system. Start talking about that. And then when they talk, active listening is not just about listening to what they see or what they've said. It's also about listening to the pauses, the emotions, and the energy. And again, it goes back to observation, where you're not just observing the body language, you're also observing the choice of words. You're also observing whether it's on a Zoom call or it's in person. You're also observing what the person is saying, what the person is not saying. And that's when you'll tend to become a better judge of people. You'll tend to be a better listener. And at the end of the day, it goes back to speak less, query more, and listen intently.
Yeah, brilliant, brilliant. So there are 100 small things in your book. What are the small things? Because small things can make a big difference, can't they? Sometimes it doesn't have to.
Oh, absolutely. Whoever said that small is beautiful was the smartest person or one of the smartest persons I know of. And that if I could give you three examples, if that's
Do.
okay with you, in one question.
Delighted.
So one of the most important people, one of the most important aspects of knowing people really well, or to figure out what a person is truly about, is to actually go and try and gauge what their journey was from childhood to adulthood. What I mean by that is to figure out the first 18 to 21 years of a person's life. Most people don't change, they become more of what they already are. So if you can actually examine or observe or study the first 18 to 21 years of a person's life, that's when you know each of us, there was something when we were growing up that was missing in our life, that was denied to us, or that wasn't available to us. So what happens is that what we lack is what we pursue, and what we pursue is what we truly are. Let me give you an example. So let's say if most people, you'll observe this with most people who've not grown up with money, let's say. So what they do is that their pursuit is to go after money in terms of acquiring. Nothing wrong with it. I'm just telling you what their focus is. That for the larger part of their adult life, what they're going to do is if not being grown, if not been raised with money, they are going to go after acquiring big or lavish homes, um, acquire luxury cars, iconic handbags, costly watches, high-ended jewelry, and the works. So in essence, you want to lead a very glamorous or high status lifestyle if you've not been raised with money. And this is for the larger part of your adult life. If you, on the other hand, if you've not got love, if you've uh, led a life where you've not experienced peace or happiness, or you've not got the attention or social validation, or your emotional needs have been unfulfilled, then that's what you're going to go after for the larger part of your life. So the key in this particular instance, if you want to really know people better, is to go and study the first 18 to 21 years of their life, or the journey from childhood to adulthood. So that's the first way, or the first important way to figure out people. The other thing that happens both at the workplace and in our family or relatives environment or friend circle is to ask yourself, the people you interact with, is there somebody there who is a compulsive, or what I call a compulsive serial or habitual gossiper? That means if a person gossips to you, and I mean gossip as in negative gossiping, there is a little bit of discussion behind somebody's back, which could be normal. But if it's a compulsive gossiper, as in if he or she gossips to you, they will gossip about
About
you.
you. Yeah.
If they share your secret, if they share other secrets with you, they will invariably share your secrets with other people. How they speak of you, or how they speak of others in front of you, is how they will speak of you when you're not around. So that's the way to figure out people. That's the second way. The third way is another very important role, is that we are surrounded by people. There are people who are our well-wishers, family members, friends, extended family members, peers, colleagues, co-workers. So advice is a word where a lot of people will come and give you advice, sometimes solicited, sometimes unsolicited. So how do you figure out who are the best advice givers, the outstanding advice givers, vis-a-vis people who are very average in giving advice? So one of the best ways to do that is to uh, you know observe if people walk the walk. Are their
Yeah.
actions and words aligned? Do they follow the advice they give to you? If they do that, then by all means go follow their advice. But if they don't, they're more preachers than doers. One of the ways to figure out who to ask advice for is to notice if they have been through a lot. People who've invariably been through a lot, seen a lots of ups and downs or failures, or and have been able to turn their wounds, their obstacles, and their setbacks into powerful comebacks for learning and change, and to experience epiphanies in life around their career or their relationships or their life, they are the people to go to for advice. Because not only have they turned their setbacks into comebacks, but you'll also see their seekers. They're seekers, and in their time, or even when they are interacting with you, they have actually sought advice from experienced mentors, gurus, coaches, consultants, which has made them adaptable, which has made them open to learning and change, which has made them become humble and always wanting to uh, move towards the next goalpost. So these three aspects will help you know people both at the workplace and in your personal lives better.
Yeah. So that's I'd agree with all of those. And then the first one is understanding somebody's first 18 to 20 years of their life. I think probably a lot of managers be interesting if you're listening and you've got teams of people working for you. Could you explain for each of your team members their first 18 to 20 years of their life and how that might have impacted how they are now? That would be, but that's going to require being more interested than interesting as well, isn't it? So you've got to be very interested in people to learn about them and listen to them. I agree with you about the gossiping and also the advice. Um, I was just thinking. I read about. I'm just trying to think what his name is now. Um, Really famous US singer. He's now deceased. But one of the things he always said was, you should never be scared of anybody. Don't fear anybody. The second thing was have a bullshit detector. I guess that's your advice. And the third thing was to go through life with a light touch. Lou Reed, that's who I'm thinking of. Lou Reed
Yeah, yeah, that's right.
was his mantra. I liked those. Um, so we're going to go to commercial break now. What I would suggest to people when you're listening to this is to take out a notebook if you've not got one already, and or if you've got a recording device on your phone. Obviously, if you're driving, please don't do this. And then identify maybe one or two things that you could take away from this interview and really put into practice. Do you need to be a bit more interested in your people or your team? Do you find yourself someone who's actually drawn into a gossip behind someone's back? Because if you are, that people may feel they can't share things with you because you might it might go and be passed on elsewhere. And also, are you giving advice about things that you've experienced in life or not? So some good thoughts in there. Is there some life experience you need to get to be able to give good advice and experience to people? I met somebody who he had multiple failures with his businesses, and then decided to start giving people financial advice. And I thought, well, actually, I'm not going to take advice from you. He wanted to give me lots of advice. I then gave him some advice back on one of the investments he was recommending I put money into. I walked away, and sadly, he lost his home. Sadly. So we're going to go to commercial break now. I didn't. I didn't listen. I didn't take the advice. But anyway, we're going to go to commercial break now, and we'll be back with you again in a couple of minutes. And what I want to do after the break, we're going to move a bit more into talking about karma. What is karma, and how can we prevent karmic entanglements? So we'll be back with you again in just a couple of minutes. So I see Pushpendra, you're about to say something.
Yeah. Do you mind if I were to give you an instance or two of how an example or two of how observation at the workplace, there was a question you had asked me around how it helps strengthen business decision making, and there was something else around it.
Let's do that
Uh,
after the break.
sure,
Because we need to have a commercial break now. We'll be back
sure.
again with you in just a couple of minutes. We'll do that. Hi, this is Chris Cooper. I'm with Pushpendra Mehta. We've been talking about Observe to Unmask. Before we start the interview again, I do want to say a big thank you to my dear friend and Elevation Collective member, Wendy Keller. Thank you very much for introducing me to Pushpendra. Really appreciated. Wendy is one of America's leading book publishing agents. Helped about 2,000 people land publishing deals, I believe. Super smart lady. So much gratitude. So Pushpendra, you were saying to me before the break that you'd love to give a couple of examples of how observation can really help decision making for leaders and organizations. So over to you.
Before that, if I couldn't agree with you more. Wendy Keller is one of the most outstanding literary agents, and for any aspiring author, or even if you are a writer, I would recommend a book proposal writing workshop. It's going to augment, it's going to make you a better writer, a better storyteller, and overall a better individual. Yeah, if I can come to that, uh, it's a very good question that you asked me in terms of observation. If I can give you an example or two.
Please do.
So one of the most important vital areas in corporate or business or entrepreneurship ecosystems that helps strengthen teams or strengthen decision making is how your hiring process. In particular, hiring the right people. That means paying close attention to the interview process and how you hire people. So most of the time, hiring is based on skills, expertise, experience, and or academic background, which is extremely important. But what happens is that some of the most accomplished individuals may not be necessarily very good interviewers. So you end up hiring the wrong person, and 6 months down the road, you realize, oh, I had the wrong person. The person lacks resources, the ability to make the right decisions or work along, get along with team members, or in essence, is a very average performer. So, what do you do? What do you do to make sure that you hire the right people in a very uncertain, chaotic, and ambiguous world? Both whether, regardless of whether you're a business owner or you work for a very big company, the first thing that you can do is to make sure that you ask them uncommon questions, questions where you can cut off the rehearsed the interviewee's responses, and also see what's not on the interviewee's resume. You can start off by asking them two questions. First question is that tell me about give me an example about how you overcame, not just dealt, but overcame failure, rejection, defeat, or uncertainty. So, years ago, I ran an online news media and publishing company. So there was an individual I interviewed. Her name was Abby, and she came to us and she'd been passed over by a number of organizations. When I interviewed her, I never understood how is it that somebody who's as creative, brilliant as her, she has everything on the resume, has been passed over. Is it a temperament issue? Does she not get along with people? Or is this something that I'm missing that people saw in
Mm.
the interview? So I asked her this question, and this is a question I've asked people on every interview. It's never failed me. I said, can you give me an example or two of how you've dealt and overcame failure, rejection, defeat, or uncertainty? So she said, sure. And she said, I come from the school of hard knocks, and then went on to offer a couple of examples of how she not offer a couple of examples of rejection and defeat, how she overcame that with ingenuity, creativity, determination, and self-belief. And I was blown over. And I said, we have to hire her because she's going to work. She's not only going to work very hard, not only is she going to be committed, she has the ability to work with people and she's going to value what she does. And it proved to be the right person. She did an incredible job. She was one of the best engaged and best and the most engaging content creators and designers we signed up with. The important thing is when you're hiring people and you ask this question, you want to see if do they flip out? Do they beat themselves up? Do they offer excuses? Do they pass the blame? What are the valuable lessons they've learned from their failures or setbacks? Have they been able to turn their setbacks into a comeback? And more, do they have a solution oriented mindset? So
Mm.
that's why asking that question becomes very important. The second question you want to ask people is when you're hiring them is tell me the most important factor for business or entrepreneurial success. So ask them a question. I've done that in interviews where I've been asked, I was mentoring, for example, I was mentoring a co-founder of a fintech company, and he asked me, do you mind sitting with us or participating in the interview of a chief marketing officer that we're trying to bring in for our company, and there are four candidates, and they're all four very good candidates. We like to hire the right person. So I said, sure. So I was mentoring them. So I said, sure. So during the course of the interview, obviously, I have a tendency, you tend to review the resumes before the interview, think of a few questions. And very impressive resumes, very little to choose between the four resumes. So we went into the interview. The founder and the CEO asked questions. It's progressing very well. In my mind, I was shortlisting two candidates, but eventually it turned out to be somebody else. So they asked me, would you like to ask a question? I just asked them one question. So can you tell me the most important factor for corporate or business success or entrepreneurial success? And I listed six or seven things. One was adequate funding, sales, uh, cutting edge technology, a terrific product or idea, a robust business model, a terrific team, or good timing. So I said these seven things. Can you choose between one of these and tell me? So, as expected, two of them presented compelling arguments that said finance or adequate funding or money. The third person said good timing, and the fourth said I don't think it's timing. I don't think it's finance. It's really having a terrific team or a terrific product, one of the two. So I said, can you choose between them? They said a remarkable product. So here are the first three or four scenarios. Well, uh, no guesses. Whom did we select? I mean, obviously, all of them had the competence, the skills, the abilities, and the experience. And like I said, very little to choose from. But we decided to uh, hire the person who said good timing.
Yeah.
Because even if you have all the other factors, adequate funding, terrific teams, cutting edge technology, a robust business model, a remarkable product, a terrific sales team, you've seen businesses fail. Because if you are ahead of your time, or you come too early, or you're behind the times, or uh, you launch something a little later than you should, you're not going to be successful. That's why good timing is extremely important, because it's far-sighted, and good timing helps you remember that fact that if there is good timing with the product launch, there's good timing with decision making, there's good timing when to cut your losses, when not to take the risks, when to take the risks. If the timing is right, you can afford to make a few mistakes. And one of the other things you should also ask in an interview, which again will strengthen your decision-making process, is discuss a book with the interviewee, a book that they've read recently, or a podcast they've listened to or watched fairly recently, or a webinar they've participated in. That will tell you a lot about a person.
Hmm. Excellent. Well, let's move on now. Let's move on to karma, because you're writing a book on how a lack of self-observation leads to negative karma. So, can you explain, what karma is and how how it can impact our lives and potentially the workplace?
That's a great question. I'm glad you asked me that. Thank you so much for that. So, uh, Before I tell you what is karma, I'll share a very interesting statistic with you, which is based on research. There are over 1 billion people that span three of the biggest English language book markets in the world: the US, the UK, and India. All those billion people and over believe in karma. Karma is also central to the worldview of several Asian religious traditions, and karma is also being followed by a number of people living in different parts of the world, including the Western world. So we have over 1 billion people who believe in karma, and we also have celebrities around the world who believe in karma. There are over 400 companies in the US whose names start with karma or have the first or the second name as karma. So if it's such a popular and intriguing topic, despite all of that, you realize that most people don't know the definition of karma as is collaborated by research, which includes books and articles. So what is karma? Most people think that karma is an act of reward or revenge. It isn't so. Karma is, simply put, a mirror or reflection of our past, current, and future actions.
Hmm.
Uh, every every action of ours, for every action, we create a karma, And when we create a karma, there is a consequence, there is an outcome, which could be favorable or unfavorable, positive or negative. So for every action, we create a karma. For every karma, there is a consequence. So that in essence is karma. Now, if you were to talk about karma at the workplace, there is a very interesting study by the Pew Research Center, which was done in February 2022, which said that one of the most important reasons why people quit their jobs is because they feel disrespected at work. A few years, fairly recently, there was a study by the MIT Sloan School of Management which said that once again, the most important reason why people leave a particular job is that they feel disrespected at work. Yes, but more importantly, there's a toxic work culture. And that toxic work environment uh, is actually the reason why people, or there is an attrition. 10.4 times more of attrition is caused by a toxic work culture than even compensation, according to that study. Now, what happens is that if you feel disrespected at work or there's a toxic work culture, then it's going to obviously lead to not only to resentment with people at work, but it's also going to be a place where you're not going to be very happy. You are going to be disgruntled either with your supervisor or people that you work with or the work culture. And that means there is going to be a two-way karma creation process. So there's negativity within me, there's negativity when I see the supervisor and vice versa. Similarly, I hate going to work every day, or I hate, even if I'm working remotely, I hate doing that. That will augment the karma creation process. Karma also gets created not only because of these reasons, it's also because of the ego clashes at work. It could be selfishness, it could be being passed over for a promotion, it could be authoritarianism, micromanagement, it could be a discrimination, or it could also be this big fat difference in compensation levels between the C-suite and the rest of the employees. All that is work-induced karma, which augments, collects itself, and manifests itself in the form of negative consequences and negative karmas.
Mm.
Now, when that happens, and because we are spending so much of our work, our waking times, we are dedicating at least a third of our life to work, which could be remote, hybrid, or it could also be in-person work. Which is why if people can hone their power of observation, intuition, understand karma, become good listeners, that's when they can discover the telltale signs before they sign up for a job, they sign up for a business partnership. They can discover the telltale signs. Oh, it's going to be toxic working with these kind of people. It's going to be toxic working with this supervisor, or this partner will not be the right business partner. And if you can do that, then you can save yourself from a lot, or avoid yourself from a lot of trouble. So, which is why I always tell people, put karma first. Karma comes first. Money, success, fame, and power follows. It needs to come thereafter.
Yeah. So karma is an energy. We're talking about managing energy here, are we? And I've seen the word of karmic entanglements. Is that when there's lots of different energies at play, people are maybe feeling frustrated about the way they're spoken to by the managers. They may be feeling frustrated by their pay. They may not like their desk where they sit because it's drafty. Or it might be a decision that's been made that hasn't been well communicated. So you end up with all of these different energies that are flowing around the business, which are a consequence of the cause and effect relationship of your actions.
Absolutely. It is cause and effect. And, it's also karma is the point where science and spirituality, the ancient and the modern meet. It's very scientific.
Mm.
The most important cardinal rule to remember is regardless of whether you are the rich, the mighty, the powerful, or you feel that you can escape, for every action there is a consequence. For every consequence there is a favorable or a negative outcome. And that means if there is, for every action that we perform, there is a karma and there is an adverse or a positive outcome. uh, One has to remember that you and I can escape the law of the land. But you and I cannot escape the law of nature or the nature of karmic consequences, which will eventually catch up with us, regardless of whether we believe in reincarnation or only one life. Which is
Mm.
why I tell people put karma first and everything else, fame, recognition, success, power, money, thereafter.
Yeah. So why is there? Why do you think it feels at the moment in the world that people are ignoring some leaders are ignoring karma, or they're actually happy to disturb it.
Because, like I said, we believe that we can, if we are rich, we are mighty, we're powerful, if we are successful. Again, it's watching your patterns. If see you've seen a lot of success in recent times, or things are working your way, you got to be very cautious. I always tell people, please observe your actions, your deeds, your thoughts, your intentions, your habits, your outcomes, your negative patterns, particularly when you are successful, particularly when everything in your personal life, you have a wonderful wife, you have great kids, they're doing very well in college, you're doing very well at work, you're just very happy with what they're doing at school, you're making very good money. Be very careful. That's the time to stay humble. That's the time to observe your actions. That's the time to be in the listening mode. Because what happens is that if you start to believe in the aura of invincibility, and you start to feel that the Supreme Court or the highest court in any country, you can get away with that. Like I said, you can get away with the law of the land. Eventually, when you observe a person's last 5 or 10 years of their life, or the last year or 2 years of their life, you remember that karma can come through in the form of emotional suffering. It can come in the form of financial suffering, mental suffering, or physical suffering. It does not have to be XYZ. It could be any of these. And that's why you look at some of the greatest leaders of their times, you look at some of the greatest CEOs of their times, the, the most smartest business owners, the best individuals. I always tell them, look at their last 5 or 10 years of their life. And that is where you realize that we cannot escape your karmic consequences.
So you say we wear our the consequences of our actions physically to our health. Is that what you're saying? And our relationships?
It's not necessary that everybody who gets cancer is because of karma. It could be because of genes. Or it could be because, I didn't follow the right diet in my 20s and 30s and 40s, or I got a heart attack in my 50s. Or there was, it was diabetes. Nobody had in my family, but I got it. So obviously that is also karma because it's an action. You did not eat correctly. You did not exercise the way you should have. You were a couch potato. So obviously, then you need to get stent, or there's going to be a bypass. So karma also means watching, like I said, everything you do. It's not just your words, action, thoughts. It's also watching your eating habits, your exercise, your communications, how you deal with people. There was a particular incident where I saw thought I actually witnessed this. Each of us have, I'm sure, at some point in time, you're belittling somebody who is physically deformed. You're belittling somebody because of the color of the skin. And guess what? Your son turns out to be autistic. And then you
Yeah.
turn around and say, what did this happen to my son? Again, I'm not saying that happened because you said it, but there are chances it could have happened. Or, somebody had a bad quarter at work, or somebody had a bad day at work, and you think that person, each of us have a bad day at work. It can happen. You can understand. And there's a particular way of dealing with it, but you think that person is stupid. You're always constantly criticizing and constantly blaming other people or constantly copying and fault finding. Guess what? You're going to be in a similar situation. So you lay off people when you have $100 billion in reserves. You have a lot of money, and the people in the C-suite, they can make a small sacrifice, and even if they can save 10 jobs, it will make a difference. At some point in time, that money will not work for you.
Yeah. Yeah. I always remember many years ago, probably 15 years ago, running a retreat for a board of a large company in the financial services world. And the chairman of the company, it was 2.5 days. And at the end of it, he said, Chris, what you've made me think about is one of the things I've been thinking about during this program is that when I was building this company, I was away so much and I just didn't have any time for my kids. And he said, my biggest regret now is that now I've got time for my kids, they don't have time for me.
Hmm. So true.
And I thought that was I thought that was really, it's a good maybe an example of karma that you're certainly feeling that later on in life. And we see that, don't we? People end up on their own, having had everything and losing everything. And so be careful, I guess. Be careful about and the actions that we put out there in life, because one day they may come back and haunt us. Um, so if you want, if somebody wants to live more consciously, observe more, maybe react less, and create better karma, can you suggest a daily practice that they might want to adopt? Something that could be helpful. We just got maybe 2 3 minutes before, well, 2 minutes before I need to wrap up.
Oh, that's a terrific question. I think that's a very good question. And I'll just five things. The first thing, I've already said that. Please ensure that your karma comes first and money, power, success, fame thereafter. Because if your karmas are right, the right money, the right power, the right success can do a lot of good things. So that's the first
Yeah,
thing. The
yeah,
second thing is, please remember that for every action we perform, there is a consequence.
yeah.
And we can escape, you and I and all of us who are listening to this podcast, we can escape the law of the land, but we cannot escape the law of nature, which is the law of karmic consequences. The third is, please observe yourself first, because before you go and observe and judge other people. The fourth thing is, speak less, query more, listen intently, feel deeply, work with your intuition, read voraciously, and more importantly, observe people's choice of words.
Yeah.
And last but not the least is, remember, triumphs are short lived in the 20th century. Yesterday was last night. Today is a new day. So keep learning, keep observing, keep improving, stay humble, and stay adaptable.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. That seems beautiful. It seems like you've left us with a really great final message there, really, in that. Is there anything you
If
want to add before we?
if there may if there is something which is a slight diversion, but that's it captures my philosophy for personal and business success, for people who want to be outstanding, want to leave an imprint in this world, leave a legacy to be remembered by. And this is not something that I'm saying with the fact that you need to be vain or be egoistic about it, but this precious philosophy, that is a particular quote from my novel The Suitable Inheritor, which also features in my book Observe to Unmask, which is the detailed explanation you can find in my novel The Suitable Inheritor. The quote goes as, pursue your passion, work with your intuition, learn as a child, and adapt as water. And if you can do that, pursue your passion, work with your intuition, learn as a child, and adapt as water, you're going to lead a very happy life and a very successful professional life as well. Thank you so much.
Beautiful way to end. Thank you, Pushpendra. And if you want to find out more about Pushpendra or get in touch, go to pushpendramehta.com. That's pushpendramehta.com. And if you've got any questions or comments, I love to hear from people. So do send them to Chris at chriscooper.co.uk. If you've got any suggestions of great people you'd love to have on the show or topics, or do get in touch. So wishing you all well. Please go and mind your karma this weekend and this week ahead. Give it some thought, and maybe spend some time observing people as well and seeing what you notice, and maybe even putting the mirror in front of yourself and observing yourself too. We'll be back again with you next week on next week's show. I'm actually on holiday this next week, and I'm repeating a great show with Tessa White on the unspoken truths of career success. Really profound and helpful book that. We've got a little theme here going, I think, around leading yourself, and which would be nice to conclude next week. And then I'll be back again with you for yet another week. So do take care, everybody. Have a wonderful week, and